Hi all, and welcome to Opera Orlando's Representation Matters series. I am your host, Chevalier Lovett, and I proudly serve as a board member for Opera Orlando. Also, happy International Women's Month. For those that tuned in last month, guest host Brittany Renee chatted with Maestro Kelly Kuo, choreographer Maxine Montelus, and costume designer Christy Shackelford about the significance and ideas behind our original production of Carmen set in 1960s Haiti. I personally can't wait to see that all come to life in person on April 1st and April 3rd at the Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts, or online on April 16th if you can't join us at the theater. For this episode of Black Artists, Black Stories, we are so happy to be joined by special guest host Sarah Purser, Opera Orlando's studio artist program director and fellow Representation Matters committee member. She will be joined by members of our newly commissioned opera, The Secret River, Maestro Everett McCorvey, Metropolitan Opera soprano Emily Pulley, who will sing the role of Marjorie Kinnan Rollins, and Florida native soprano NaGuanda Nobles, who takes on the role of the mother, Cassandra.
Well, hello, everybody. So happy to have you all here for this panel. I am so excited about this piece, especially as a Florida resident and an educator. I'm just really excited to talk about The Secret River because, you know, it's based here in Florida and it's based on the young adult book that was written by Marjorie Kinnan Rollins. So I thought it'd be a good idea to just start by talking a little bit about the piece. Everett, maybe you can talk a little bit just about this opera.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm delighted to be here today. We are very excited to be presenting this, what's a good word? I think of fanciful, I think of whimsical children's opera that really is going to bring a lot of people in from a lot of different backgrounds in order to make this, to tell this story and to make it come to life. But the story is about a young Calpurnica who is on her quest to find a magical river because her family needs, they need food, they need, she wants to help her father and help the community to be able to be fed. And she's heard about this magical river. And so she goes on a quest to find this river. And along the way and coming back, she meets all of these wonderful characters who help her, who she is able to help through the fish that she's caught from this magical river. And she gets to change her whole community because of her work. And the libretto is by Mark Campbell, and the composer of the music is Stella Sung. And it's going to be a very exciting children's show. We're using puppets and puppeteers as well. It's going to be beautiful with colors. It's going to be really a wonderful experience for all of our audiences who are able to see it.
Yeah, I am so excited about all of these elements that we're pulling in, the puppets that you mentioned.
Yes.
I think it's going to be like whimsical and very fantastical.
Yes.
You mentioned some of the characters, so maybe Emily and NaGuanda, can you talk a little bit about who each of you play? We'll start with Emily. Can you talk about who you play in this opera?
Well, I play the author, Marjorie Kinnan Rollins, and I am trying to come up with my next great book. And in the beginning, I'm struggling, trying to find what kind of story I want to tell. And in the opera, I say, write what you know, write what you know. And so she does. She loved the land where she lived. She loved Cross Creek. She loved the people of Cross Creek. And so she came up with this beautiful fable that I think really speaks to our times about the difference between need and greed. And it talks a lot in the book, it talks a lot about the hard times and the soft times. And I think we can all relate to going through some hard times. Yeah. So I think that that Marjorie in the opera comes up with a really good story. And I think she finds sort of her own secret river in her own mind through the development of this piece. And you can just tell in reading the book, and I think Mark's done a great job of capturing it in the libretto as well, her love for these characters and for this place that was such a big part of her life and of her heart. And I think it really comes through. And I think it's that Stella's done a great job in the music capturing that essence as well.
Right. I'm so glad that you kind of mentioned about your character, Marjorie Keenan Rawlings. She is obviously the author of the book, so she is not actually in the book. I have the book here, by the way. So it was such a cool way that Mark Campbell was able to actually incorporate Marjorie Keenan Rawlings into this opera, and I just think it's so awesome that you're the one that sort of you set the whole story up. And I think that's just a cool way to kind of tie you in. And Marjorie Keenan Rawlings, she was such a strong character in and of herself. I mean,
she really was. And when she really immersed herself in the culture of Cross Creek and the surrounding areas, and just had such a genuine affection for it. And the works that she wrote that were set in that area are so different than set in the North and in other areas. She really was speaking from a special place, I think. And so these characters, one of my favorite moments in the opera is when I get to sing a duet with the wise woman of the piece, because I feel like that's one of the moments where sort of all the fable and the moral of the story that she's trying to tell, I think hits home with her as well. So it's one of those great things where art and life commingle and make the artist a better person, and and hopefully we pull the audience in painlessly as well to see the beautiful story behind the story.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
And something else that I think is so amazing is how she, through this book, gives a picture of Black life, and how people learn about the Black culture through this really passionate and compassionate writing of this tale. And it was something that really drew me to the book.
Yeah, it's a beautiful portrayal of this young girl.
Mm-hmm.
She's just portrayed in such a strong character, and she's a child.
Yes,
and she saves her village, and it's just the way that these characters have been written, it just sets them in such a beautiful light. You want to know more about their community, about their way of life. You want to be part of it. I love it. And,
the optimism, I think, is, it's really nice seeing this story. There's a great line where she asks her parents, "Are we poor? I never thought we were poor."
Mm-hmm.
And just that optimism of, the hope of every day, and that, oh, things are terrible right now. Well, I need to do something about it. And she's so creative and so inventive, and doesn't allow herself to be weighed down by, the difficulty. She's like, oh, there's a problem. I have to come up with a creative way to see if I can help out. And, and I think that is the secret river.
Yep.
And so I think that's the point. It's like, well, how can I help? And what creative skills do I have? And how do I keep my heart open and my mind open so that I can find a way to help out of the hard times?
Right. We have so much that we can learn.
And if you think about when it was written too, I mean, if you're thinking 1955,
right.
I mean, and what was going on in America, what was going on in the South during this time, and, really in a lot of ways, the courage to write this sort of book at this time is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. NaGuanda, can you talk a little bit about your character as well?
Yes. Excuse me. I play the role of Cassandra, and I am the mother of Calpurnia. And it's interesting because, of course, when you start researching a role, you try to find some way to connect with that role or that character so that you can create that genuine artistry. Well, off the top, I connected with her as a mother. And so as I was introduced to her, and I as well purchased the book because I thought, oh, this is so cool that we're actually creating an opera based on a children's book. So I purchased the book and read it with my 7-year-old, and all of the things that you all have mentioned were things that we discussed, while we read the book. And so when we meet the mother, Cassandra, we talk about, we find out that she is pretty much everything that a mother would want to be. She has this sense of humor, but, with sternness. She also has compassion, but honesty. And so those are the things that kind of really drew me to her, just from the time that I spent with her, her text and throughout the libretto. And then, of course, when I added the music. So I'm very excited about this. I didn't know at first that there were going to be all of this puppetry. So that added another level of excitement. Yeah.
It's going to be spectacular. I love what you were saying about being able to relate to the mother character, because she empowers, her daughter to be this creative, this adventuring spirit.
Right.
And I love the portrayal of this family. It's a loving, supportive family. And I think that we need to see more Black families portrayed in all art forms. And so the fact that this is coming to life, this beautiful family is being represented. So I'm very excited about that. One of the things that I'm an educator myself. I'm a teacher, and so anything that has to do with bringing music and opera to young people, I get really excited about. So when I found out that this was the opera that we were commissioning, I wanted to be involved in it. But I thought maybe it would be interesting to hear from you all. This might be the first time some of the children in our community are introduced to opera, and so I was just wondering, what was your first experience? What was your first introduction to this art form, NaGuanda?
Can I just be honest and say, I did not see an opera until my senior year in college.
Wow.
I'd known about it, through college, and it never really interested me. I was more into concert and orchestral works. And so I spent most of my undergrad degree focusing on that repertoire. And when I, at the end of my senior year, towards the beginning, I decided, you know what, I'm almost done with this degree. I've never been in an opera, so let me try it. So I auditioned for Papagena in Des Alba, and it changed my life. I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been so used to wearing all these gowns and in front of the orchestras and just singing as a soloist. But it was really exciting to be on the stage with other characters interacting. And there may have been costume changes for some, other characters, of course, not mine at that time, but just the different layers of the opera was very exciting. So to start this at an even earlier age, I think would just be an amazing experience for a lot of students, so they can see all that this art form has to offer.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think it's really cool that this, we're sort of bringing opera to them because, when I think most people think about opera, they think that it's on some different level, and it's in maybe a different language or it's maybe too complicated for children, which is not true. We know that.
Right.
But this is literally an opera that was written specifically for them. And I just love that. I think it's going to pique a lot of interest, for young people. That's what my hope is.
Yeah.
And the music, I haven't heard much of it, but from what I've heard, the music, when we think of contemporary opera, sometimes we think it can be a little bit hard, but this music is so beautiful and enchanting. And I really feel it will appeal to, I think, young and, it'll appeal to the gamut. Emily, can you talk a little bit about your first experience with opera?
Well, I think for a lot of us, All in the Night Visitors was one of the first ones. And I, because it wasn't in another language, I didn't realize that it was actually an opera until we studied it in college. I was like, oh, my elementary school music teacher played that for us every year. And so I could have sung pretty much the whole thing from memory by that point. But it didn't occur to me, oh, this is opera. And because it was accessible and because it was it has an innocence to it. I think it doesn't matter. I think kids of all ages will find something to relate to in this piece. But having something that is specifically written for children, I think will unleash the children and the adults. And also there will be a lot of children who have their perspective changed about what opera is. All opera is telling a story through singing.
Yep.
It's pretty basic. When I speak in elementary schools, I say, how many of you listen to country and Western music? And a lot of hands go up. I said, so they're just singing about losing their loves and bad, hard times and all this kind of stuff. I said, well, that's what opera is. We just use different music for it. So, but I think accessibility is something that's really, really wonderful. And especially when it sets the imagination free like this piece does.
Yeah, I 100% agree. What about you, Everett? What was your first introduction to opera?
Well, I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, and I grew up during the Civil Rights Movement. And, what first struck me about this this story written in 1955 was that the Montgomery bus boycott and Rosa Parks and her action happened in 1956 and 57 in that time period. And that was right around the time I was born. And so I really didn't know anything about opera, or I sang in church, as a lot of people get their start singing in church, and as did I. And then when I was in the 11th grade, Mignon Dunn came to Montgomery to present a masterclass. A lot of the opera lovers will know that the Metropolitan Opera used to tour, and they would tour to Atlanta. They would tour to different cities around the United States during the summers, and so Atlanta, the Met was in Atlanta. And the local arts council invited Mignon Dunn over to Montgomery to present a masterclass. And my mother saw it on television, on the local, 12 o'clock news when they have the guests. And so my mother said, well, son, you like singing, so why don't you go to this masterclass? And so I went to the masterclass and sang, and there were other people there from the Montgomery Little Theater and the Montgomery Opera Company that heard me and invited me to be in the chorus of the Elixir of Love. And so that was my 11th grade experience. And I knew nothing about this art form. And but after being in that chorus, I just fell in love with opera, and decided to attend college and either be a band director or a singer. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but luckily my voice teacher moved me towards singing. So, but it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know when I was a child, I remember going to see plays and going to hear the orchestra, but I specifically remember I was about 8 years old and my grandma took me to Chautauqua.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and we saw Deflator Mouse. And I was like, what is this? This is so cool. Because I already loved singing, but that stuck with me. I'll never forget. I even remember just like the seats we were sitting in and the perspective, and I was glued to those singers. And it really struck me as a child, just as it was powerful to me that you could tell a story and just, I couldn't follow all the ins and the outs of it, but just I was so taken with these voices and the fact that it just seemed magical to me. So,
well, one of the things that's so exciting about opera is that it's a visceral experience. When I know that all of the performers in this meeting today have had the experience of singing you sing in a home, and you sing in the home of a donor or whomever, and you're close to the people. And I think so many of them are just overwhelmed by the visceral feeling that happens when an opera singer sings in front of you. They look like you and me, but then they stand up and open their mouth and this amazing sound comes out that then just sort of transforms your whole life because you feel it all over your body. And I think that is such a large experience in opera where not only do you get beautiful voices, you get the scenery, you get the orchestra, you have all of these elements, artistic elements coming together to create this production. And in a lot of ways, I think it's like you were talking about, Sarah, it's overwhelming. It just sort of touches you in a manner, in a way that just changes your life. So it's very exciting.
I kind of like what you said about how, about they look like me. And I want to talk a little bit about that because in this opera, these characters do look actually like the students that are going to be seeing this production. And so I kind of want to talk about what this means about having a mostly Black cast, a story about a Black family, and this being an educational opera, just about the importance of all of that and what does all that mean? So maybe Everett, you can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I remember very long ago, and I was in New York and pursuing a career as a freelance artist. And I think it was Jesse Norman doing Les Troyens at the Met. And it was a big deal. And someone asked her about the fact, how do you she said, you're doing, the interviewer said to Jesse Norman, you're doing this major role at the Metropolitan Opera, but yet the people in the audience are mostly not people that look like you. And they were saying, how do we correct that? And I will never forget Jesse Norman's response. She says, if people want to see, people will come to see people like me on stage when there are more people like me on stage. The reason that people don't come is because the reason my people don't come is because they don't see people like me on stage. And I've never forgotten that. And so I think that diversity has to be intentional. And it's incumbent upon all of us to try to make sure that our cast is diverse. I know I have certainly done that in my work, both as a producer and a conductor. And so I think what's exciting for me is to have this sort of opera where these kids will come and, in their lifetime, say, even if they are between the age of 6 and 10 years old, they will have, certainly 6 and 16, they will have experienced an opera where they see people who look like them. Many of them will have seen a vice president who look like them. And some of them might have even seen a president that looks like them. And so that's something that really excites me, that we are helping this generation that's growing up to experience opera in a way that is probably more diverse now than it's ever been in the history of our country.
Thank God, I love this art form so much, and I feel so passionately about teaching the next generation because I want it to keep on keeping on. I want it to be here for my grandkids, and I think the only way to do that is like what you said, we need to make sure that what people are seeing on the stage, who people are seeing on the stage, they look like them. And not only that we're telling their stories as well. And so I think, the idea of new operas that are being written and telling tales and stories and, making sure that representation is at the forefront. I mean, it's important for a lot of reasons, and it's important for the art form. One of those small reasons is it's just important to keep the art form.
Well, I think that you never know who's in the audience also. And just like you as a child were there and were so influenced in Chautauqua, imagine how influential. We will never know the part that we will play in a young person's journey just by the experience that we are able to give that young person. And I think certainly, again, all of the artists who are participating, not only in this project, but just in singing and performing, we take that very seriously in the importance of passing this art form on. And, I remember earlier today when Emily was talking about going into schools and singing, I'm sure NaGuanda, Emily, we've all done the school program where we are going and introducing kids to opera. But that's the way we we continue the tradition so that the next generation will be as excited and as passionate about it as we are. And so I think it's something that we look forward to. And what Orlando Opera is going to do with this production, I sit in the production meetings and I just go, wow, that's exciting to bring all these talents together in order to produce this opera.
I mean, when Gabe and Grant get these ideas, when, we're like, let's do this thing, somehow we just always make it happen. I love that music. We dream up these, these great ideas, and then here it's actually happening. So I love that. And I, like I said, I am a teacher, and I'm also for Opera Orlando, I'm the studio artist program director. And so our studio artists are the ones that are out in the schools, and they're the ones that go out. And so right now we're in those planning stages and making those connections with our educators in the Central Florida area, and just we're gearing up to do just exactly that. So I'm so excited that these students in this area are going to be able to see this representation. That it might be their first introduction to opera, and the first opera that they're going to get to see is going to be about this beautiful family, this beautiful child who looks like them, who is from this place that they're from. It just really, it gets me so excited to think about just the possibilities. So I don't know, Emily or NaGuanda, did you want to talk about your thoughts about this story and how specifically this story about a Black child and a Black family, what it means?
Well, I think that there's the intimidation factor of opera is the biggest barrier to everyone. I have friends my age who have never been to an opera because I wouldn't understand it. And so I think that you're removing that barrier by exactly what's already been said, but the fact that also that we're coming to them, that it doesn't feel like they have to go and try to understand. It's like, no, we're presenting this to you, and we know you're going to understand it, and it means a lot to us to have that connection, and to once. I think that is the secret to keeping this art form healthy, is to doing all that we can to make it, accessible is an overused word. Relatable is an overused word, but just knowing that to remove the intimidation factor. And I think the way that you do that is with familiarity, and the fact that it's going to seem familiar, and that's going to just make everything seem like, oh, well, this is no big deal. I can get this. And then who knows what other art forms, are going to be opened up to them as well. Because again, people think that opera is this thing that people, I hate music, it's a lot of in a big dark hall where they really don't want to be at all. And there are lots of furs and diamonds. It's like, no, it's storytelling, and everybody loves stories because human beings are narrative creatures. And so we're going to come and we're going, we get to tell this beautiful story and remove some of that, the barrier of intimidation. And that is done through the representation, and also through creativity. I think children grasp creativity. They understand that because, anything that gets their imaginations working. And so seeing themselves represented on stage, seeing this huge imaginative world that's being offered to them, and that's so great. We take them out of their own world into a different world for a while, and then when you go back into your own world again, it looks a little bit different.
I love that. I love that idea. We learn so much through art, and so these students are going to have an opportunity, and really anybody that comes to see the show,
right.
What they take from it when they bring it back home, then their world has changed.
Right.
I love that, Emily. NaGuanda, did you have any thoughts about this particular topic?
Nothing really different. I think everything that you all have discussed sums it up, but I really like what Emily said of intimidation. There have been so many stereotypical things surrounding opera. And so, the intimidation of, oh, I don't dress like this. I don't look like this. I don't speak this language. I don't do this. But there are so many ways to connect with opera, the storytelling, the music. We incorporate different styles, that are just wonderful. So yeah, I think everything that you all have discussed, absolutely. Hopefully this will take away the intimidation and we create a new audience.
Right. Yeah. And bring this opera to people who might have never even thought about going to see an opera.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that idea. So speaking of, we're workshopping this opera before the production. And so this is actually my first time being involved in a world premiere. And so I think probably a lot of people are kind of confused about what a workshop is or what does that mean, when you have a new piece. So Everett, maybe you could talk a little bit about what it means to workshop a new piece.
Absolutely. If you think about a lot of the works that happen in classical music, not all, obviously, but if you think of the great composers that people talk about all the time, who are they? They talk about Bach, they talk about Beethoven, they talk about Mozart. Well, what's one, if you have to think of a sort of adjoining quality of those composers, the major thing that you will say is that they are dead. And
old, white, and dead.
And so, how often do we get to work with live composers in the creative process of putting something together? And in this case, we're getting to work with live composers and a live librettist who are currently out there creating. And the beauty of creation is that when you're creating a new work, it's wonderful when you get to work directly with the composer or directly with the libretto, because they are writing for specific voices, just like Mozart did in his day and Beethoven did in his day. They wrote for voices. And so the workshop process is when we bring those voices together and we're there with the composer and with the librettist that have been working on their own with themselves, basically, to work on putting this process together. But then they need to try it out on people. And so it's like the previews of a Broadway show where you may be in previews for 3 months. And then if you open and it's a flop, you may only have one performance. But this won't be a flop. And but we are working together with the composer and the librettist and the artist to make sure that it fits. NaGuanda, for instance, has gotten the music for her character, and she's at home practicing it. And, it has a note that may be too low that she needs to have a little higher, or it's in a part of her voice that she doesn't want to demonstrate. And she says, oh, I need to change that part as well. And so she gets to work with the composer and say, hey, could you think of something a little different here? Or could we maybe change this note or make it, so it's that sort of thing that we get to do in a workshop performance. And so that's what we're doing in April. We're getting together and we're actually going to put parts of the show on its feet and see what works and see what doesn't work and what needs to be changed. And typically, because you have a great librettist and a great composers, those changes are going to be minimal. And but we want to see it on its feet. We want to practice with the puppets, for instance. We want to practice with some of the scenes and make sure that those scenes work. So a workshop production and a workshop performance is very, very important to the success of the production, because we get to see what works and what does not work. And so And the cast gets to meet each other early and work together. And so I've known of Emily's work for, a long time, and now I get to work with her. I've known NaGuanda since, she was just starting out, and she's turned into a major star, and I get to work with her. And so it's just great to get together and put all these creative juices together and energies into one room, socially distanced and with masks, but but we'll be together and we'll get to put it on its feet. So it's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, and it's really exciting because, we're not just getting everybody together to run through this in April before December, but in front of a live audience, like you said. So,
well, that helps too, because sometimes you're putting things out there and you expect a certain reaction from the audience. Yeah, and then, it falls flat on its face. Whereas, you may have other scenes that you didn't think were very important, and all of a sudden the audience just responds in a major way. And so it's like, wow, we get to put all of this together to see what works, see what doesn't work. And then after the workshop, we'll get together again to discuss what was successful, what went well, what we need to change. And we're doing that with the singers. And then later on, in a month or so after that, I'm coming back to work with the orchestra to see what works with the orchestra that Stella has put together, and see how that works, so that when we get together in December, it'll all just run very smoothly.
Yes. And it will. It will.
Oh, I'm excited. And you know what? The other beautiful thing about this is that we're creating a work that won't just be in Orlando.
Right.
It's going to be all over the country. And how timely is this, work, as you think about what we have been going through over the last year with the Black Lives Matter movement and the different, social issues that are happening in our world. And to be able to produce this opera at this time in our history in this country is it's exciting, and it's an honor. I'm so honored to be a part of something like this. And I think our whole team will say the same thing. So I've had those moments too, Sarah, where I'm just thinking, wow, how lucky are we?
Yeah, it's a special project, and it's even more special, I think, now that it's happening right now. We're all in a pressure cooker, we have been, and even more so, in this past year. It just feels like this almost, it's something that I think we all need,
Well, Sarah, we were supposed to get together in January to have this workshop. And then we were all just too nervous about being together. And, COVID at that point was not under control. And so, I thank all of the people at Opera Orlando for saying, hey, let's put this off for a few months. Let's see what happens with the virus and all of that. And so I think we're at a different point now in terms of, most people are beginning to get their vaccines. I'm glad I got I had both of my dosages, and I'm so excited to be ready to get back out. But I think that, we've been able to weather that very, very difficult storm. And so this, in a lot of ways, is going to be a coming out party for, all of our artists who have, the arts have been, decimated by this, because over the last year, we've not been able to be together in what is probably the most collaborative art form there is. And so it's going to be as much of a celebration as it will be a workshop.
Yes, I cannot wait. So I have a question for each of you that I'd like you to answer. Just pick one thing, the one thing that you are most excited about pertaining to this particular production. What are you most excited about, NaGuanda?
Ooh.
What are you excited to write?
I think for me, being able to create what we love to do in person. we've all had our virtual, collaborations and recitals and concerts, and it's just not the same, to be able to create music with other musicians and feed off of their artistry, and and give your own artistry, and have that just combined product in person, I think is what I'm the most.
Yeah, and you said create, and not only are we actually creating in real life, but you're creating a character too. Yeah. So I think that's very exciting.
Yeah.
You're the first, so.
No pressure.
No pressure. It'll be amazing. Emily, what about you? What are you most excited about for this production? What's the thing that makes you the most excited?
Well, I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see everyone involved with it. Again, getting together. It's one of those things where I was fortunate enough to come and perform in Miami at the end of January, and that first feeling of being in the room singing with people, you really get very choked up. It's you realize how much you've been missing that. So of course, getting to actually be in the same room with people and have that collaborative spirit that, where the whole is so much greater than the sum of its parts. That's what we've been missing as we've pieced together some of these wonderful projects online, but you don't get that, overused term synergy, but that feeling of this is so much bigger than each individual. And when we have that happen at the same time, it's so exciting. But it's also exciting for me, this character in particular, I'm the bookends on this piece. So I'm at the beginning and at the end. And so I get to watch this wonderful myth unfold and feel, I'm a part of it, but I'm also, I get to stand and watch it as feeling like an audience member. So I'm excited about that regarding this role in particular, is that I get to be a part of it and also get to enjoy it without, without worrying about, about some of the other things and go, well, I wonder how they're going to make this happen.
I love that. I love that. And what about you, Everett? What's the one thing that you're most excited about?
Well, I've done a lot of work throughout my life in terms of just trying to break down barriers, especially in classical music, and perceptions of artists of color. And my work as a conductor has been very important in terms of people being able to see someone who looks like them on the podium. And I think what we find out from this story, but also from the participation of all that are in the cast, that, in life, once people realize that people who don't look like them still want the same thing out of life, what do we want? We all want to be able to provide for our families. We all want to be able to offer our families a comfortable way of living. We all want to live in peace. We want to live in harmony. These are just universal desires that people of all cultures have. And luckily, in a place like the United States, we have a constitution that says people are entitled to all of those sort of things. Although we know from what's been happening over the last year that hasn't necessarily been the case, and that all people feel like that. And so I'm excited to be in an environment and in a production that's going to reinforce the ideals that all people want the same things. Even in this story, what do they want? They want to be able to provide for their families and to help their families in the next generation have a better life. And so it's heartwarming to me, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of that journey in this production.
Well, we're thrilled that you are part of this journey and part of this beautiful, exciting adventure that we're about to undertake. I have one more question for the panel. And Everett, you sort of just touched on this already, but this series is called Representation Matters. And so I just wanted to hear from each of you, why does representation matter to you? Why is it important to you specifically? So
Well, I'll start off since I just think we have been entrusted with incredible talents, and everybody on this call and in this production have been entrusted with incredible talents. And we just want other people, especially young people, to have the experience that we have been able to have with finding what our gift is and then sharing our gift with the world to help make the world a better place.
Yes, amen. I love that. Emily, what does representation matter to you? Why is it important to you?
Well, I think we seem to have different truths in this crazy world that we're living in right now. And I think that we need to tell the truth, that all of these constructs that have been put in place that have separated us are false. Yes. And I think that the best way that you can break those barriers down is by speaking the truth and telling it in a story so that people will hear it, and by showing them that we do want the same things, that this story is true and the representation is true, and everything that we put in place is just out of fear and out of some strange delusion that we feel like we need this. And if you put a beautiful story and tell the truth, there's a way that this art form can get into people's hearts and minds in a way that if you have someone speaking these words, it doesn't necessarily have the same impact as when someone sings it. It reaches straight into your heart, and if it gets to your heart, then hopefully it'll get into your head. And I think that's the most powerful tool that we have in this art form, is move their hearts, and hopefully it'll move their heads.
I love that. That's beautiful. It's spot on.
Thank you.
NaGuanda, what about you? Why does representation matter? Why is it important to you?
Well, if I can, representation matters not only on bigger stages. But to me, as a young girl growing up in church, I was surrounded by gospel. And there was an organist who was also a classically trained soprano. And so my first introduction to spirituals and classical pieces was through this lady. And, so I had not been out. I didn't know what opera was. I didn't know what the classical world, involved. And so that was my introduction. And so I had a gift, but I didn't know where I could push that gift. I thought it was just in the walls of the church. And so by her staying true to herself, she didn't sing gospel. Whenever she stood up, it was something that was, true to her, which was on the classical realm of the Ave Maria and Give Me Jesus. And so if I hadn't seen that, and if I hadn't witnessed that was her true self, I wouldn't know about this other type of music. She also worked at the school. So as I got older, she changed my schedule and put me in show choir. And that was a big discussion because I'm thinking, I don't want to sing show choir. I don't know, I'm just the gospel singer. But we had discussions, and she told my mom, if you take her out, that'll be a big mistake. So that show choir teacher pushed me to go to Florida State University's summer camp. And I met Dr. Andre Thomas. And so at the age of 15, I was offered a full scholarship to Florida State University. And all of that, was me opening my eyes to see, oh, wow. Not only was this organist, my first introduction to another way of music and way of life, but now I have this Black conductor who's invested in me. And so it not only matters, for the big lights, because before there was a Jesse Norman in my world and a Leon Price in my world, there was a Frances Williams. And although she's deceased now and she never got a big career, and nobody really knows her name, I've had the opportunity because of her to travel and sing with major orchestras and on some major stages. So people see me, but that was my representation that really planted the seed on, you can do more with your gift.
Yes. And the line continues,
The line continues. Yeah. Continues.
That's beautiful. I mean, wow, what a wonderful tribute. Thank you for telling us that story.
Well, I just want to thank each and every one of you. I didn't think I could be more excited about this world premiere, but I think I am. Talking with all of you, I feel really honored to have had this this really intimate, special conversation with the three of you. So thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait till you all get to Orlando.
See you in a few weeks.
See you in a few weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Sarah, Everett, Emily, and NaGuanda for sharing their time and talking about this world premiere production. You all will not want to miss the Secret River Piano Workshop on April 24th at Mead Botanical Garden, which will be free and open to the public, and the world premiere in December 2021, next season in the Jim and Alexis Pugh Theater at Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts. This is Chevalier Lovett signing off. Save the date for our next episode, the premiere episode for LGBTQ+ artists, LGBTQ+ stories, on May 2nd, where we talk with members of Opera Orlando's final On the Town production, As One. You can find out more information by liking Opera Orlando's Facebook page for the series schedule and updates, and by subscribing to Opera Orlando's YouTube channel for all archived episodes of the series and much more. Stay safe and keep singing.
I'm Sarah Purser, an ally artist.
I'm NaGuanda Nobles, a Black artist.
I'm Everett McCorvey, a Black artist, conductor, impresario, producer, singer.
I'm Emily Pulley, an ally artist.